I want to hit on one, and if anybody ever says, let's just go through every one of them one at a time, we can do that, but I want to go to the one on the millage and stuff here. I just want to ask some questions right away that I want to ask on that.
Which Paul?
Property tax. On the second page there, the new place for the 1.5 mil,
Okay.
5-year property tax.
Okay.
Why is it 5-year? Okay, why are we waiting till February of 2016? I still want to know why it's a 5-year. You mean in another 5 years, we're going to have to go through this fight again? So that's a question, you know, that's something where if we would have gotten something on the city income tax, we wouldn't have had to worry about 5 years. And like I said, the February thing makes no sense to me to ever miss a big election unless you are trying to sneak something through.
Well,
And that's, we know how that operates sometimes.
Ken, can you speak to that, why she wanted to wait till then?
No, I can't speak to that, but I can speak to the 5-year. The likelihood of passing a 5-year versus an open-ended is much better.
No, I just don't like the fact that now we have to go back and fight for it another 5 years.
I would say, Mr. Manson, I see your point, but my position would be 5 years more attractive to me, because I enjoy or appreciate the aspect that if this money is misappropriated by future councils, there's a safeguard in that for the citizens to withdraw.
And I disagree. I still prefer it as a levy, whatever we do. I don't care how we do it, it should be permanent, not 5 years. On the 753,000, and there's delinquency of 3.5%, I don't quite understand what that means. Does that mean you don't collect all of it?
The people who don't pay their real estate taxes.
Okay, so
That's
then,
due to Mr. Manson.
okay, so then you see, it's 727,000. That's the total 1.5, right? That's
Correct.
That's the combination of the 5 for the streets and the 1 for the or 5 for the street replacements.
The delinquency rates, I got that from the
100%. Okay. You know, folks, the only thing I had a problem with when we ran the city income tax that I heard from anybody at all was about the street lighting. And probably if we would have maybe considered taking the street lighting off too, like we considered the tax credit, we may have had more people who were interested in it. Yes.
Mr. Coer, look and continue to review this property tax levy. This is actually the only piece on here that would make any kind of meaningful strides as far as revenue improvements for the city of Massillon. What I can see, you have a couple other ideas that if things work out, maybe we see a little bit of a bonus, a plus on our balance sheets. But if we have $727,000, whatever, coming into the city and we obligate all of it, which I agree, these things we need to be obligated to, but none of it goes to assist in the general fund, how do we overcome that deficit that we've already seen? It's all being spent, so you're not actually, you're bringing in new money, spending on capital improvements. Right now, we know we don't spend $242,000 on new vehicles, and we all know we don't spend close to $500,000 on repavement. So this is going to increase our cost as it increases our revenue. So how do we overcome the deficit?
Well, some of that is general fund, because we really had to increase the amount in the general fund for the streets.
So that's street repair. We're talking about
Yeah.
street replacement, which we don't do with our general fund.
Yeah, if we're not using that money to patch holes and equipment there, then that would take that out of the general fund.
And what are we projecting out of our general fund for road repair, such as patch?
Let's see. For 2015, supplies, materials, and postage, is 71,000.
Can you give me the line for that so I can find it?
Yeah, it's on page, these are different here. It's the 1100-435 accounts.
435. 435, 2410, $71,400.
Right.
And you're estimating that's what we spend annually on the tar and other materials in order to fill potholes?
No, we had to increase that amount in the general fund because there's not enough money
In the other number?
in the other funds there that are funded by excise tax, gasoline tax.
So the idea is that when we take, let's just call it $500,000 maybe, because you're going to say, when we take this $500,000 repavement, we would be able to probably reduce that number by about $71,000 using our other funds to continue patch and repair work. Is that the idea?
What are the other, yes, that would give us that relief in the general
So
fund.
we're looking at a potential $71,000. Where did we come up with that calculation? And I guess the reason I'm saying that is because I know that much of our patching, these guys out there, they go out there and they labor every day to try to keep up with the problem. The first streets we're gonna start repaving are some of these major roads. Once we get the major roads, we're gonna finally start patching some of these side roads that haven't seen any kind of patchwork.
We've been able to do the major roads a while ago with grant money.
Okay, resurfacing. I'm talking about like the patch. I guess my problem, my thought process here is I don't know if we're gonna really see a savings in the general fund for at least the first 2 or 3 years, because even though we're resurfacing roads, which are causing those to not need to be patched, we have so many side roads that haven't been patched for so long that that money's gonna be redirected to try and get some of our side roads patched up. Could I see in 4 to 5 years that maybe we get caught up enough that we start to see the savings? Sure, but it might take 4 to 5 years, which means we still have the impact of that bottom line.
We
That's
do
where
have-
these numbers come in. Where are we gonna start to see the turnaround?
Well, the money on this too isn't dedicated to the targeted areas too, like some of the roads.
I can get that, but I don't think the targeted areas really comes into play with my line of questioning. The thought is next year, at the end of 2016, we're gonna have approximately $111,000 deficit. We're taking this money and we're gonna obligate it to much needed capital improvements, which I love, because it's my biggest soapbox I have. But even if we are able to cut some, I don't see how we're gonna cut the $70,000 general fund using this as our stream of revenue. And even if we did, we still have a $40,000 gap that we have to overcome. It doesn't even get the whole 111. And I guess that's why I'm continuing to say we need to see these numbers, see how this is gonna work. Because while we may sit here and argue philosophy won't mean a thing if it doesn't get the job done regardless. And I'm not convinced that it will. And I'm just trying to work my way through this.
Well, one of the big items too is the vehicle replacement. Right now, we have no real meaningful source to fund vehicle replacement in the street department.
I think that only furthers to strengthen my argument here is I want to see a vehicle replacement program. I enjoy the fact that I see an administration that agrees with me on this fact now and is willing to try to do something that gets that done, and I support that. However, I don't see how this particular levy, even though it does work on our capital improvements, I don't see how it will support closing that deficit that we currently have, or we will project to have at the end of 2016. Especially if we're going to have to keep our split at like 99-1 in order to keep it. Is that what I would assume Ms. Brown projected?
Beginning next year goes 98.2.
So she projected on 98.2, so the only way we close the gap into the year 2016 is if we go to a 99.1, which means another year of essentially little capital improvements. And then we close that gap. And then the year 2017, I think the gap is going to be somewhere around $400,000. So even the closing the split's not going to get it done. And I don't see numbers of how this plan will get it done. I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense. I hope I'm not just filling it all up with a bunch of words, but this is just my thought process.
Christian.
Ken, you have you talk about one of the new issues with the citywide staffing review.
Correct.
On point number 2, it talks about consolidating or sharing services among departments. I mean, do you have specifics there? And number 3 says outsourcing functions. That's all from the performance evaluation, right? Performance
Most
review.
of that.
Those suggestions came from
Yeah.
the straight after the review. Did they, and I don't remember this, did they actually look at different functions within the city or things that they thought would be outsourced or combined? Did they make specific
No,
recommendations?
well, they were specific with the Parks and Rec and the Police Department, and then the fire. Those were the performance audits. The performance audits weren't a citywide.
Right, that's right. But you, I mean, do you have some thoughts about, I don't need you to be specific here, but have you discussed with the mayor thoughts about possible outsourcing or consolidation of services?
There may be opportunity where if we improve our technology, we won't have to replace people who are retired.
Through attrition,
And I know you're working on with the police department on their staffing levels too, but
Right.
we really need to look at that on a citywide basis.
okay. Yeah. Like I said earlier, I mean, a lot of this, you know, when we were talking about maintaining and reducing healthcare costs, and, you know, performance audit for the police about overtime and minimum manning, I mean, those are all things that have to be done through negotiation of the collective bargaining agreements, and that, you know, I wish I had a better feel for where that was gonna go. So we had a lot
Well, for
of-
the purpose of the numbers and the recovery plan, those numbers are remaining static until something really
That's good.
happens.
Do we have any projected savings through reduction? And maybe that's how we're gonna close that gap?
Pardon me?
Do we have any projected savings through reduction of any kind? Like, I noticed in here, we're talking about healthcare insurance premiums, we talked about the staff and other things of that nature. I can only assume that given the revenue ideas aren't going to close the deficit, that we're gonna close the deficit through some sort of cut or reductions. Do we have any projections on those to show that how that's gonna affect the bottom line of the city?
We're going to be working with 5 different contracts this year, so I think my hope is that we maintain the cost sharing that we have.
So I guess like the healthcare insurance, premium insurance participation, estimated $470,000 paid by employees during 2014. That $470,000, is that a $470,000 savings to the city?
As compared to 2012.
2012?
Well, that's, the 470 is what the employees paid into the plan
What they
last
pay
year
in 2012?
in 2014. In 2012, when some of us got here, that was 0.
That was 0. So we have that savings, but now my projections moving forward would show no savings there, because it's starting to implement, correct?
Those numbers are static for the plan going forward.
So I guess my point being, the numbers I got from Ms. Brown, they're not going to be adjusted because that's already been done.
Correct.
Ken, speaking of healthcare costs, the shared costs, the amount the city pays per employee is the same regardless if it's a family or an individual, is that correct?
The amount the city pays? No. The amount,
We do vary it?
the amount the employees pay is the same
Okay.
at this time. And that's $172 a month per employee. That's in the plan. Plus, they pay 50% of the dental premium, 50% of their vision.
Is it around $250 a month or something, maybe, what they pay? I heard the figure. It's not important. I mean, I just-
$225 if they have the PPO.
Is dental an optional program?
Not if you're a new employee, you're automatically enrolled in that. The employees that were here when that new plan was in last year, they could opt in or out.
You said the new employees. So new employees have to pay 50% of their dental.
Right, they're paying $28, the city pays $28. There's a lot of numbers.
Yeah.
Mr.
Is that
Coe,
how you come to the 172? Is that the total?
That's just for the
Everything?
health insurance.
That's just the health insurance.
Right.
Mr. Coe, can I assume the same thing then for the abandoned property registration fees, the $25,000? Can I assume that the same thing happens there that we just discussed in healthcare? That is something that's already taken effect in 2014, the name projections I've now received would already include that.
Not in our previous forecast. No, after the end of last year, that's going in the new forecast.
In the new force, so the numbers I have from Ms. Brown may not include $25,000 in additional,
Right.
but it says non-general fund,
Most of that is.
because it's going into that quasi, we hold on the money.
Yeah,
for a while.
there's an escrow set up, but then there's, part of that goes in general fund under the building department.
So it really, so the $25,000 is not gonna really improve my deficit, it's just,
It's only there if we need it, then it doesn't come out of the general fund.
so
If we end up with an abandoned building that we have to tear down, there's money there.
so bottom line, it doesn't really help. It's a nice thing, I think it's an amazing thing that we did, it helps keep our city looking good, it helps keep people accountable for their abandoned properties, but it doesn't help the bottom line in the general fund when I'm trying to keep the deficit recurring. Explore and evaluate other available collection services, that's probably what the OSS was.
Correct.
Do we have an estimate as to what revenues would be gained from that?
No, I can get that.
I'm just trying to find where we're getting the money from.
Yeah,
That's all.
based on the CBSC contract.
Yeah, if we could figure that out, maybe that'll help me understand where the deficit will be reduced by. Now, I can only assume, I'm sorry, just keep going with the wheels at the same time. I can only assume that with the adoption and implementation of the vehicle replacement plan, I will say that if we do fund that through whatever revenue stream, I would speculate that we would see a savings there because the cost of maintenance for the current aged fleet would be reduced, and that's been one of my main points about how, we bought we were gonna lease 2 new SUVs, we ended up purchasing, but, vehicles were costing us $8,000 to $9,000 a year anyways, and the lease one would have been about the same, why not give them a new instead of the old for the same price? So I would be willing to bet if we forecasted that, we're gonna see some savings.